Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to the official YouTube channel of Islamabad Policy Research Institute. My name is Tanzila Khalil and I am a research fellow here at IPRI. Today's episode is one that hits close to home as we will be talking about a fight that Pakistan has been fighting for more than 4 decades, the war against terrorism. From Afghan-Soviet war to the rise of groups like the TTP and BLA, Pakistan has lost more than 90,000 lives and $150 billion in economic damage. Yet, the world rarely sees us as a frontline state that we truly are. So, why does this perception gap exist? And what can we learn from Pakistan's transition from military operations to a broader whole-of-a-society approach in defeating terrorism and extremism? In today's episode, we will unpack this journey through exploring policies, sacrifices, and strategies that have defined Pakistan's counter-terrorism approach. So, to talk on how far we have come and what lies ahead, we have with us Brigadier Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua. He currently serves as a Director, Research and Analysis here at IPRI. He holds a PhD in Peace and Conflict Studies from NUST. He also holds a master's degree in Security and Defence Management from Royal Military College, Kingston, Ontario. Sir, thank you so much for joining us today. So, we'll have a set of questions. I'll just start off with the first question for this podcast. So, sir, Pakistan has for long found itself at the epicenter of global terrorism. From proxy wars to regional instability, it seems to be in the crosshairs of something far more sinister. Sir, why do you think is that, and what makes Pakistan such a persistent target for terrorism?
Thank you very much, Tanzila. Islamabad Policy Research Institute also held an international conference recently on this very important issue that you have highlighted. Terrorism has been the bane of Pakistani socio-politics, so to speak. It's the tyranny of geopolitics, sociology, and unresolved historical conflicts that have put Pakistan in the crosshair of terrorism. Okay. Our joust with militancy has been since 1947. Metronomically, we have been experiencing upsurge of militancies in our Balochistan. But though that was not classic terrorism, the phenomena of terrorism, it coincided with the waves of terrorism as it unfolded at the global levels. In the late 1970s, Pakistan experienced the real brunt of terrorism from across our western borders, Afghanistan. It was a destabilized Afghanistan, and that was coming to grips with a transition, which ultimately happened in a very cataclysmic form in the shape of Soviet invasion. Sadat Daoud's government, imbued with a sense of Afghan irredentism, it started fomenting acts of terror inside Pakistan. So that was Pakistan's first brush. And from there onwards, there was no looking back, as Pakistan very gamely tried to stem this tide, tried to fight this scourge to the best of its ability, acted as a veritable bulwark, even during the times that a full-fledged war was going on in Afghanistan. So entire sociology and demography of our former tribal areas, now which are merged areas, completely changed. And as a consequence of that, from 1989 to 1996, there was an internecine conflict in Afghanistan. It had a direct spillover into Pakistan, and there were proxy actors, there were non-state actors. Because of environment of safe sanctuaries that was on Pakistan-Afghanistan border, that was a bequest of the long Soviet-Afghan war, in which the whole world created a base for fighting this Soviet war. And because of that, a peculiar environment was created, which Pakistan tried to come to grips with. The whole social structure was changed. The erstwhile system of frontier crimes regulation and political and administrative management of the tribal areas changed, and certain actors, they attained primacy at the cost of old hierarchical structures. So that was a veritable witch's brew, and out of which sprung the non-state actors. And then there was a conflation of international currents of terrorism going on. We all know that there have been four waves that classical terrorism scholarship tells us. The first was the anarchism, and which lasted till 1920s. From there onwards, it was 1920s to 60s anti-colonial struggle, the likes of T. Lawrence, his struggle, Armenian struggle against Turkey. So that was, and then later on the manifestation in the shape of Baader Meinhof, Italian Red Brigade, Japanese army. So those were the kind of terrorist entities that could be categorized in second phase. There was a third phase, which was post-Cold War. Once the new states formed, there were unresolved border conflicts, ethnic identity issues. So that resulted into another wave. And after that, there was a fourth wave, and that was the ideologically driven terrorism, which still continues, in which there are non-state actors that use religion as an ideology, the distorted version of religion. And that wave coincided with the conflict that was brewing in Pakistan in late 1990s. And after 1999 to 2003, there was a semblance of order brought about by Taliban regime. But that regime, unfortunately, was so medieval in its thinking, so primitive in its outlook, that it accorded sanctuaries on the basis of ideology to those non-state actors that were an anathema to an international community and a security threat to whole international order. We all know what happened in 9/11, and as a consequence, the US and the NATO coalition, its operations in Afghanistan resulted in another wave of militancy, and Pakistan was the frontline state. So according to the UN principles, in accordance with the resolutions like 1373, 1377, Pakistan completely stood in the center of this battle as a bulwark, and it abided by its international obligations. Even at the cost of domestic criticism by its detractors, the government stood resolute, providing all kinds of assistance in accordance with its obligations to support international anti-terrorism effort in Afghanistan. But Pakistan got the short end of the stick. Once the conflict was wound up, another government came, and we all know that Karzai regime and Ashraf Ghani regime, those continued, and those also had their issues with Pakistan. And those non-state actors, their erstwhile affinity with the resistance factions inside Afghanistan, so that could not be completely controlled and severed. And when the Americans pulled out in 2021, there was a fresh wave. And not only Pakistan was saddled with refugees, Pakistan was saddled with the humanitarian responsibility, because there was a veritable crisis brewing up in Afghanistan. World Food Program started issuing warnings of a food crisis, and there was a health emergency. So Pakistan stood firm, lending ballast to the international efforts to support this humanitarian support mission inside Afghanistan, and at the same time stemming the flow of terrorists from across the border. But unfortunately, in this time, the geopolitics again started playing their part, and our eastern neighbor, started fishing in the troubled waters, and an entity that had started targeting Pakistani forces in 2007 onwards, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, that was given safe sanctuary, and unfortunately after 2021 it got a new lease of life. For whatever ideological or their own administrative reasons, the Afghan interim regime has not been able to rein them in. And not only that, but in Balochistan, once the CPAC started taking off, the geopolitics again came into play, and the detractors of CPAC started helping those entities which keep the economic corridor destabilized. So BLA, BLF, they got a new lease of life. These grievances had simmered since long in Balochistan, but those were always on a fringe, and those could be managed. But because of this newfound relevance of India in contain China policy, China was a kind of a bugbear to all those international forces that did not see this corridor as an economic corridor, which viewed this as a strategic threat to their interests. And India willingly appropriated the role of a regional surrogate.
So, sir, from this discussion, this leads me to my second question. You have mentioned that Pakistan has acted as a veritable bulwark against terrorism. So, if you could please walk us through Pakistan's lived experience. What has it really taken on the ground and at policy level to resist and push back against this threat?
Pakistan has paid a very high price, in fact. In the 70s, Pakistan was taking off economically, politically. A wave of terrorism on its western borders was imposed by Afghan regime, and Pakistan responded well. We had casualties. Hayat Sher Pao's killing is a stark reminder of the grisly terrorism acts that were perpetrated in those times. After that, there was a lull during the Afghan Soviet invasion. Post 79, a sectarian angle was also added. So there were actors that were pushing back against the ingress of a rival ideology on sectarian basis. And since the religious motivation was the basis of that anti-Soviet support, the sectarianism also started crept in. So Pakistan, fought very effectively against that sectarian menace as well. Extremism and those issues, those got a new lease of life because of the proxy sectarian warfare in Pakistan.
Right.
After that, it was the 9/11 onwards where the real issue of terrorism was experienced, and Pakistan since supported the international community very munificently, very effectively. It received opprobrium not only by its detractors but by those extremist elements which had a distorted image of religion and which started struggling against the state. A network of militant entities in our former tribal areas, those banded together under the leadership of Baitullah Masood. And Pakistan, in fact, tried its best to root out the extremism from its spaces where it was nurturing, like madrasas, mosques. And in one of the operations in Lal Masjid, operation was done by the state in good faith to rid the space of the militancy. But as a consequence, there was a wave of suicide attacks. In 2007, once TTP was formed, 2,000 police and army individuals, they embraced martyrdom as a consequence of the terrorist acts. And there was a steady ingress, and there were certain areas which were under the control of the terrorists in Swat, North Waziristan, South Waziristan. So that was the time that Pakistan said enough, and in addition to intelligence-based operations, full-fledged operations were launched. We started with Operation Al-Mizan, then Operation Rahe-Haq, that was followed by Rahe Rast, Rahe Nejat series, and after ridding the area of the presence of militants in South Waziristan, finally North Waziristan was the last bastion of terrorism and militancy. So that was also cleansed in Operation Zarb-e-Azb in 2014 to 2016. And in Operation Zarb-e-Azb, you will be surprised to know that a very heavy price was paid by armed forces as well. If you carry out total tally from 2001 to 2024, you yourself mentioned that 90,000 plus, those were the casualties. That's a very large number. Yes. And at the same time, but remember that 36,000 hardcore terrorists, they were also eliminated during the same time. And in Zarb-e-Azb alone, in one operation, Pakistan sanitized 4,000 square kilometers of area, and 3,500 terrorists, those were hardcore terrorists, those were eliminated. And Pakistan paid a heavy price in terms of life also, but very successfully eliminated this menace of terrorism. But remember one thing, that once you are struggling against terrorism, there are certain enablers, and those enablers include the external support and the international environment. The geopolitics and external sanctuaries, those act as strong support props to terrorism. And unless you remove those props, terrorism would keep simmering. You can reduce the intensity, like in all the diseases. The modern medicines cannot eliminate all the diseases, but those can manage. So that's a kind of strategy that Pakistan has followed ever since then. As I mentioned, from 2001 to 2024, 15 major operations have been launched, starting with Al-Mizan, and the last is Azm-e-Istehkam, which is still going on. Radd al-Fasad was before that, and now Azm-e-Istehkam is going on. So 15 operations continually. Our armed forces, our paramilitary forces, police is in the front and center, bearing the brunt, suffering casualties, and that takes its heavy toll in terms of material, psychological distress. But very manfully, Pakistan armed forces, its paramilitary forces, police, and I must say the society has stood firmly. And this is a great testament to our resilience as a society, that we have kept this rising tide of terrorism at bay, despite all the geopolitical odds that are stacked against us.
So, sir, despite all the efforts and sacrifices made by Pakistan that you have just highlighted very aptly, why do you think there is still, this persistent narrative of mistrust at the global level? Since you have also mentioned the geopolitical aspect of this whole phenomena, what do you think needs to be changed at the diplomatic and political level to get the recognition and acknowledgement that Pakistan truly deserves?
It's a very good point that you have raised. You see, terrorism is not a standalone phenomena. It's a complex, multidimensional, transnational phenomena. And until and unless there is a whole of the international government approach, we keep banding about the usual cliches and platitudes like whole of the government approach, whole of the society approach in fighting terrorism. But in today's world, where globalization, external support, geopolitics, that impacts, and the porous nature of the borders, greater mobility due to globalization, technology, that has given terrorists an ability which can only be countered through a whole of the international government approach. So, United Nations we know has 12 terrorism conventions, but each one was created with relation to a specific threat. And since the international community could not agree on a single definition, so these definitional issues have bedeviled the counter-terrorism approach. A holistic approach could not be created. There's a need at the international level to create an organization, maybe in Vienna under the anti-terrorism setup, create an international organization that should be tasked with implementation of this body of international law, 12 terrorism conventions, a slew of UN resolutions. They started with 1267, 1363, 1333, 1373, 1377, and amazingly 1377 is a resolution that has not been given due attention. In that resolution, there is an obligation upon the states to resolve the regional dispute so that the reasons and causes of terrorism could be removed. Here in our neck of the woods, we have India, which is a big country, which refuses to even talk about unresolved disputes. And it's in clear violation of UN Resolution 1377, not abiding by its anti-terrorism. So there is a need for international community to gel together and understand the hydra-headed nature of this terrorism. Now, no country can be an island in itself. We remember John Donne's famous, verses, never send to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. You cannot be an island into itself. United States is a very strong country. It can remain very secure. It can remain very safe because of its geography, because of its military might. But the more it creates a fortress mentality, the more it creates defensive layers around itself, protects itself, and less it invests in supporting the countries which are in the crosshair of terrorism, the more terrorism will prosper. So I think that understanding at international level is a must, because there are approaches of dealing with terrorism. You can treat it as a war, you can treat it as a disease, you can treat it as a crime. War and crime are partial amelioration strategies. Treating it like a disease, the likes of Stairs and Yakubian, the scholars, they tell us that just like epidemiological approach in medicine is used, you have to take care of the host, whose cells and social media networks which are creating this, the agents which are becoming victims, which are recruited to its cause, the vectors like the extremist religious spaces, extremist ideologies, and then its overall environment in which the bacillus, like a plague bacillus, needs a particular environment to prosper. You have to strike all, and only then you can treat this as a crime. And once you treat terrorism as a pathology, the best part is starting with your prophylactic treatment. So prophylaxis means you should map out the concerns, grievances, vulnerable areas in which there is a likelihood of terrorism, and there should be a human deprivation index. Like we have human development index. I think international community and UN must invest in human deprivation index, and out of that should flow a remedy, and that should be in the shape of amelioration probability index. You should see which instrument works. In this area, as per the deprivation index, do you need a military instrument? Do you need a development instance? Do you need a soft preemption or a hard preemption? So this amelioration probability index and human deprivation index, the United States, the global powers like China, EU, they all should, I think, gel together, pool their efforts to control, to curb this, and to create structures at international level uh, which go for a common approach to counter terrorism. And the countries which are beset with terrorism, those should be supported. And countries like Pakistan, which have suffered so much, and they are still suffering. A full-blown terrorism campaign has been launched against Pakistan after this Pahalgam incident, because having singed its fingers in a 4-day fray, India has now resorted to covert warfare, and we all predicted that it would definitely redouble its destabilizing efforts in terrorist financing. In this conference, there was a very good exposition of the facts by Deputy High Commissioner of United Kingdom, who spoke of the new UK strategy. And he also mentioned 5-pronged UK strategy against counter-terrorism, and especially the efforts of UK in supporting anti-terrorist financing efforts of countries like Pakistan in FATF. But the actual thing has to be done on at operational level, and unless we see the hands of countries like India, which are actively fomenting terrorism in Balochistan, stopped, I think the sincerity of international community would also be under scrutiny.
Sir. So, sir, besides the military operations, of course, they have played a critical role in this regard. What sustainable approaches has Pakistan adopted to prevent the resurgence of terrorism and to maintain long-term stability?
I just mentioned that if you treat terrorism like a crime, you can partially succeed. There are enablers of crime. A soft state can never fight terrorism. You have to create rule of law, very strong government administrative structures. You have to ensure delivery of public goods to those ungoverned spaces where the recruits of terrorism are found by the terrorists. You have to ensure that you resolve the conflicts with the neighbors, and in which in fact Pakistan definitely needs the assistance of international community, maybe in the shape of mediation, because our eastern neighbor is not seeing eye to eye. It's imposing even water strictures on us by threatening to stop the river flows. It has held in abeyance illegally Indus Water Treaty. It is supporting openly the terrorist entities in Balochistan. So the diplomacy, governance, control of ungoverned spaces, assuaging of the grievances, and treating this phenomena as a pathology. Prophylactic actions are more necessary. We need to map the threat pattern and the grievance pattern, go for the cause mitigation approach, and then what I mentioned was the amelioration probability index. Go very scientifically armed with the facts that which approach works where. And it's like I said, not whole of the government approach, but whole of the international government approach. So we need to take international community, especially our neighbors, on board. Though our Afghan interim government is not responding to the desired level, but we have no choice but to keep them positively engaged, impress upon them the need of reining in these terrorists which are flowing in like a Persian wheel. There's a steady flow of terrorists from across the Afghan frontier. So that has to be stemmed. So all these approaches, and then internally the illegal crime spectrum. That's a function of pure governance. You have to improve your governance. I mentioned soft preemption. Soft preemption in the counter-terrorism parlance is provision of public goods, assuaging of the grievances, removing of those conflict irritants, and hard preemption is then going for those recalcitrants, those elements which are irreconcilable. If surgery has to be performed, then the state's hard instrument comes into play. So it's a combination of all these approaches and instruments that will yield a lasting, sustainable counterterrorism solution to us.
Sir. So, sir, since you talked about ungoverned spaces, we cannot ignore the technological evolution that is taking place. And that brings me to my last question for today's podcast, which is terrorism today is no longer just about guns and bombs. It's also hashtags and encrypted messages. So, do you think that our institutions are well equipped to fight extremism on digital platforms?
Yeah, that's a very good question. This is one of the great enablers. Now, technology has enabled the terrorists to use this instrument. Digital technologies, social media, its misuse, use of artificial intelligence to create deep fakes, and you can sow, panic, dissensions. You can create fake profiles. You can recruit people. You can mislead people. So all this needs a very strong monitoring mechanism of digital spaces. And we all know a very famous definition of by an Italian ideologue, Carlo Piscan. Terrorism is propaganda by deed. They don't just want to perpetrate a violent act. They wish to propagate it, to sow panic, to create disaffection in the population for their varying political objectives. The state has to stop, and in which there are limitations, let's accept it. There are countries like China which have created firewalls, they've created their own platforms, but Pakistan is a little handicapped in that domain, because we still are dealing with big tech companies. Sometimes they have their own commercial interest. So their pecuniary interests trump the strategic and moral interests of a country. So a balance has to be struck. We have to start a dialogue with them, and a better accountability mechanism, anonymity on social media platforms, misuse of the technology, and this proliferation of the message, the divisive messages. This needs to be stopped by digital means as well as your own laws, but a balance has to be struck between the freedoms and the control of the narrative. Better narratives have to be given, and your state has to be one step ahead of the disaffected lot on social media, which are indirectly or directly helping the terrorist cause. Better encryption means, better firewalls, and better digital literacy, strong libel laws. We have the weakest libel laws and traditions in Pakistan, and I think especially technology is now given everybody a chance to defame someone and to create pockets of disaffection, which indirectly or directly redound to the advantage of militants and terrorists. So we have to create strong libel laws. Digital literacy has to be imparted, and maybe we can in times improve our technological capacity to a level that we can have our own social media platforms, which enable us to take control of the narrative and to keep the terrorist narrative at bay.
So thank you, Dr. Janjua, for an insightful discussion and walking us through Pakistan's journey of fighting terrorism, which I believe is not just a story of resilience, but a testament to its evolving commitment to peace and lasting commitment. Sir, thank you once again for joining us. I would also like to thank the audience and request them to please subscribe our channel to watch out for more content. Thank you.